Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Family Harvest Box for December. This month's feature harvest is potatoes. So today we're going to explore our potato box. We're going to take a look at what's inside. We're going to talk a little bit about how potatoes and sweet potatoes grow. And we're going to look at how to prepare your favorite dishes with the right kind of potatoes. So I'm going to wait just a couple minutes as kind of people hop on here. I see a couple of you are already on. So thanks for joining us. So like I said, we're going to talk about potatoes today, and hopefully this will be fun and provide some value to you. I did have some people ask questions about what next month's box is going to look like. I don't know that we're going to do a January box just because the holidays are going to push back when I can get items. So I think we're going to wait until February to do our next box, but I will definitely keep you posted. So be checking your emails for what next month's box or for what February's box is going to look like, because we definitely are going to continue this program past December. So thanks for joining us so far. Thank you for those of you that got November's box. I hope you really enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoy what's in this box for December. So let's go ahead and unpack. So this month, you will have gotten, so your box is pretty heavy. If you picked it up at the extension office, it was a pretty hefty box to have picked up. But at the top of the box, if you got it out, this was, again, your handy dandy guide to what's in the box. So this will give you a guide of everything that we've included inside your box. So the 4 different types of potatoes, as well as a couple of videos about how to plant potatoes, how to avoid getting green potatoes, which we'll talk about in a little bit, how that's not safe. It'll give you the live lesson link, which you are on today, and then I'll also give you a quick link to our survey. So that's kind of just a general overview of what's on this sheet. This is going to be your guide to the harvest box every month. So keep this handy. The next thing in your box, I was really excited about this inclusion. So this is our What's the Difference page. So when I first started this box, my intention was to just do different types of potatoes, from your little baby bakers to, full-size potatoes. But what I was finding was that a lot of people are confused about the difference between potatoes and sweet potatoes. So I decided to include some sweet potatoes in this box as well. One, because they're seasonal. A lot of sweet potatoes are available right now. But also just to kind of look at some of the differences. So I did kind of outline that on this sheet for you. So you can really see the differences between potatoes and sweet potatoes and how they aren't even in the same family. They're not even related a little bit. Potatoes are related to tomatoes and those type eggplants and peppers more closely than they are to sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are more closely related to morning glory, if you've ever had that as a weed or as a flower, that they're mostly more closely related to them. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later on how each of these grow differently. So this is our cool little What's the Difference page. On the other side are all the different types of potatoes that you can find in either the stores or the farmers markets. So this is a cool guide to that. It's also going to tell you what to do with each of these potatoes, because not all potatoes are created equal, which we're going to talk about here in a second. So you're going to want to use certain potatoes for some things and not for others. And so this will kind of give you a quick and easy guide to which potatoes to use for what. So that is a really important inclusion in your box this month. There's also a Where I Came From farm page, because I had people asking, where are these, local items coming from? So this is a quick little synopsis of each of the farms where we got our products this month. So you can take a look at that. I included, again, our produce basics sheet from Iowa State. We've got sweet potatoes and potatoes on the other side, so you can take a look at both of those. This just gives you a quick information on nutritional benefits, storage, how to prepare it in a really easy way, and it gives you a quick little recipe as well. So that is all included on your produce basics sheet. And also, you've got your, of course, recipes. We've got pizza on a potato this month, as well as, let me flip it over, pizza on a potato and sweet potato fries. The sweet potato fries recipe is also on your produce basics sheet, so you should have 2 copies of that. as well as your sweet potato and apple casserole. If you haven't tried that, it's really a unique combination. So I'd obviously recommend that. And then a recipe for scalloped potatoes, because it is the holiday season and that seems to be a favorite of people in this area. I also got a question on whether scalloped potatoes and our gratin potatoes are the same thing, and they are not. The difference is cheese. Au gratin potatoes have cheese, scalloped potatoes do not. So that's kind of a fun party fact you can pull out at all your virtual Christmas parties this year. So those are, that recipe is listed here as well. So then you get to the fun part. So you had 4 different inclusions in your box this month. One was your russet or baking potatoes. So they look like this. They're brown. They've got kind of a brown skin. They've got, it's kind of almost rough and hard. So that is your russet potato. You can see I haven't washed this one yet, so it's getting my workspace all dirty here. You also had some red potatoes that look like this. Again, they're just red potatoes. Look like that. They're a little bit smaller than the russets if you compare them side by side. They tend to be a little bit smaller. These tend to be probably your largest potatoes. So these are just going to be bigger. These were a little smaller. I did notice in some of the ones in your box that there are some kind of like circle holes, just kind of like that you may have seen in on the red potatoes. What I'm guessing that is it's probably a little bit of insect damage because it's healed over. Assuming it happened pretty early in the season and it just kind of, because it's not fresh and it's not burrowed, it's not very far in. If you cut into these potatoes, that damage doesn't go down very far. So I'm assuming it's insect damage. Another thing it could be, but I kind of doubt, is weed damage. Sometimes because potatoes grow into the ground, weeds can actually go through a potato. But it didn't really look like that when I cut it open on the inside. So I'm guessing it's probably insects. It's not hurtful. It's not harmful. These potatoes are still perfectly good to eat. So I would, just cut that part off and you should be good to go. The other thing that was included in your box was your normal orange sweet potatoes. So they were pretty big. I was pretty impressed with how big these were. So we had an orange one and there was also a fun purple one. So you can try each of those in your box. So with some other types of potatoes that were not included in your box, but you may find in this store, and they're also on this list of different types of potatoes, are going to be some white potatoes. So white potatoes and russets are not the same, but they have similar characteristics. So the 2 different types of potatoes are starchy and waxy, and russet potatoes are starchy. These potatoes are best for mashed potatoes, French fries, anything where you're going to want kind of that creamy potato type feel. Are going to come from your russets. So the nice starchy potato, these are the best for making mashed potatoes and French fries. So if that's what you're going to do with your potatoes, russets are the way to go. White potatoes are pretty starchy. They're a little bit waxy, but they're not as starchy as these, but they're definitely not, I wouldn't call them a waxy potato either. So waxy potato, there's a reason I gave you red potatoes in your box. Because they're very different from the starchy potatoes. And we're going to talk about that here with these mashed potatoes. So these red potatoes are what they call waxy, which basically just means that they hold their shape better than some of the starchy potatoes. So if you're making a potato salad, like potatoes O'Brien, something where you really want them to stay in their shape, or you're going to boil them and you kind of want that potato ness to them, the reds are the way to go. So reds are better for things like potato salads or gratins or things like that. So those are red potatoes. Other types of potatoes you might find in the store are golden potatoes. Now, golden potatoes are the best of both worlds. They are mid-starchy, mid-waxy. So they are kind of one of each. So if you look at this potato here, he's good for pretty much anything. If you want to mash it, great. If you want to stick it in a potato salad, great. It's going to do kind of what you want it to do. So golden potatoes are super, super versatile. Another kind of potato you might find are these little baby bakers. So these guys are super cute. These are great for roasting. They're just really, really small. Sometimes they call them new potatoes. So I've got a golden one and a red one here. These aren't just like mini potatoes. This is how big they're supposed to be. So if you're looking at graded potatoes, this would be like a grade A. This is a size A potato. If you're looking for size, sometimes you'll see size Bs in the store. I was just in this grocery store this morning, and there were size Bs that are on sale, and they were kind of front and center even before the size A potatoes. They're just a little bit smaller. Size Bs are anywhere between 1.5 inches and 2.25 inches in diameter. So they're smaller than your size A, but they're bigger than these. These would be considered size C. They're 1.5 inches or less. And if you look at I was taught in elementary school that this is about 1 inch, the space from your knuckle to your knuckle on your index finger. So if you look at that, he's about 1.5 inches. So this is about as big as you're going to see for size C potatoes. Anything, really too much smaller than that is not going to be marketable or saleable. Another thing that you may be able to find is fingerling potatoes. Right now, there are no fingerling potatoes in grocery stores in Dubuque County. I already looked. But if you do see fingerling potatoes, because stores do carry them at different times of the year, those are a waxy potato and they will hold their shape really well. They're a little bit longer and thinner than a traditional potato. You can see a picture of it here on your sheet. They're just they're really good roasting potatoes, just like these baby bakers are. And also, if you ever have any like purple or blue or different colored potatoes, those are usually going to be pretty waxy and they're going to hold their shape pretty well. So if you're looking for starchy potato, russets are the king. If you're looking for a waxy potato, reds are king. So it depends on what you're making as to what potato you're going to pick. So hopefully that was helpful in terms of choosing your potatoes. So I'm going to have you guys take a look at these mashed potatoes here. So I made 2 sets of mashed potatoes yesterday. These were from the russets. So you can see how creamy and smooth that is. It's super, super smooth and creamy. Not really chunky. You can kind of see on the side, there's not a lot of, it's just kind of one big mass of potato. Not a lot of kind of chunks or lumps or anything like that. I did leave the skins on to make this, partly because peeling potatoes is my least favorite kitchen thing to do. I've never liked it. But also there are a lot of really good nutritional value in the skins of a lot of things, not just potatoes, but other vegetables as well. So if I can, I like to leave the skin on as much as possible. These are the red potatoes. Again, I left the skins on, so you'll be able to see the skins in there, but you can also see how it's kind of a little chunkier. It's not quite as smoothed out. I did kind of run over it with a spoon, but you can still kind of see these chunks of potato. It's just not quite as smooth. So if that's what you're going for and you really like kind of having those potato bits in your mashed potatoes, then that's great. Otherwise, I would definitely stick with russets if you want that creamy, dreamy mashed potato that a lot of people enjoy. So you kind of see the difference there. And you'll also be able to tell in terms of texture and mouthfeel as you're eating both of them. So if you want to do this experiment at home, just make 2 sets of mashed potatoes side by side, and you'll be able to tell the difference in creaminess and mouthfeel and the texture of the mashed potatoes. So that's kind of a fun way to do a little home experiment between the 2 of them. So I want to talk a little bit about how potatoes grow in the ground and how they're different from sweet potatoes. So if you've never seen a potato, they do grow underneath the ground. This is what they look like as a plant. So you've got your leaves on the top. This is where the soil line would be. And then you've got your potatoes here underneath. So you can take a look at that. So potatoes are actually, a lot of people like to call them a root crop, but they aren't. They are actually a tuber, which is an enlarged stem. So if you take a look at this picture here, this is a really good diagram of what potatoes are like. So you've got your top part here. You've got, if you've ever seen potatoes flower, you've got the flowers up there. Here's a little bit of fruit. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then, of course, you've got your tubers down here, which are basically underground storage stems. Because out from these potatoes are also going to be roots. There's going to be roots growing separately from these potatoes. So there aren't going to be roots coming out from the potatoes, but there will be roots growing around the potatoes. So these are not the roots themselves. They are the storage part of the stem. Now, sweet potatoes, on the other hand, those are a storage root. So the sweet potato itself is part of the root of the plant. So that's a difference. I did mention here, if you've ever had potatoes in a really cool season, you may have seen some potato fruit develop up from the flowers. Usually it gets too hot before the flowers are able to pollinate, but some years when it's really cool, where we have kind of a cool spell while these flowers are starting to develop, they will get pollinated and your potato plants will produce actual fruit. And the fruit kind of looks like a cherry tomato. This is what the fruit looks like. I will warn you though, potatoes are a member of the nightshade family. So that means that these are going to be poisonous because they are full of a compound called solanine, which is toxic to the human body, especially if you have kids with a lower body mass. You definitely want to keep them away from the fruit if your plants do develop fruit. The same conditions that will produce the fruit will sometimes also produce late blight. And late blight is what caused the Irish potato famine back in the 1800s. So if you are starting to see fruit develop, you be careful and watch your plants for late blight as well. So I talked about the solanine with this. You can also get solanine on your potatoes, and that is also toxic as well. So this potato has actually been sitting in the sun. So you can develop this greenish kind of color on the potato, and it's easier to see if I hold up a regular golden potato next to it. You can see how it's green. This has been sitting in the sun, so it has developed that greenness. You can also develop that in the garden if you do not hill your potatoes as they are growing. Just because these are supposed to be a stem, they tend to trend upwards towards the ground. So if you aren't continuously covering the bottoms of those potato plants with dirt, you will, or soil, you will actually see your potato tops or spots start to turn green. And these potatoes are not marketable anymore. So once they turn green, they are poisonous, and do not eat them. So make sure that you're storing your potatoes in somewhere that's cool and dark. A lot of potato bags used to be kind of all colored in so that there was no light that could get in and shipping. But a lot of people like to see what their potatoes look like before they buy them. So they've made clear packaging now for potatoes. So you have to be very vigilant when you get them home to put them in a nice dark spot so that you aren't getting this greenness develop and the potatoes are no longer good for you anymore. So definitely don't eat a green potato. If you learn anything from this video, don't do that, and store them in a cool, dark spot. So that is that. Another kind of damage that you might find on your potato is cool damage or mechanical damage. And they're both going to kind of show up looking the same. So they are going to show up looking kind of like black or gray spots within your potato. So this potato has been in the fridge for I put it on Monday, so it's Thursday now. It's been in there for about 3 or 4 days. So I'm going to cut it open so you can see what the damage on that looks like. So we're going to cut it kind of sideways here so you can see. All right, so there's also another kind of damage on here. There is a little bit of insect damage right here. Again, you can cut that part off, but you'll also see some graying that's going on the outside edge and the inner. You can kind of see the color difference here. That graying is not good, and that is partly due to the coolness of the fridge that it was in. So you don't want that. You may even see black spots develop depending on the kind or how long it was in a cool environment or how long it had been kind of mishandled. So that how the damage looks might change. But overall, that's kind of what that's going to look like. So when you do, another thing that you might see with potatoes is sprouted potatoes. So if you've got a potato that looks like this, is this safe to eat? Yes, this is perfectly safe to eat. You can eat this as I would take off, pull these parts off because they're not going to be great to eat. But you can pull that part off, and this potato is perfectly fine to eat. For those of you that have planted potatoes before, for those of you that have planted potatoes before, you do know that you cut the potato and put it directly in the ground. So potatoes will sprout from themselves. What you want to make sure of is you have 2 good eyes when you put it in the ground, just in case one fails to sprout or something happens to it or something like that, so that you have kind of a backup. But put 2 eyes in the ground and you should be good to go. So an eye looks like, those spots where these little sprouts were attached. That is considered an eye of the potato. So I've got another one here. So these would all be considered eyes. This is a small eye. You can see these aren't nearly as large as the other one. But when you cut these potatoes up, so this potato here, I'd probably cut right about here. And this would give me, I've got probably 5 eyes on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I wouldn't really want a smaller piece of potato than this, but this has given me quite a few eyes on here. As I look at the rest of the potato really only has 2 eyes. So where I cut that there, I would stick this whole piece in the ground as well as this piece. So you can see how different they are in size. Size doesn't matter. It's the number of eyes that you have on your potato that matters when you're planting them. So make sure that you have at least 2. If you've got more than that, great. They'll just develop accordingly. So we've got that. So that's how you plant a potato. If you are interested in learning a little bit more, going a little bit more in depth, my counterpart Ray, who's the other food systems program coordinator here at Dubuque County Extension, did a great video on planting potatoes this spring, and I included that link on your guide sheet here at the bottom. So check that out if you want to learn more about that. So another thing that you may find if you are growing potatoes is this Colorado potato beetle. So these guys can be very devastating to your potato crop. They lay eggs in kind of early in the season in May. And so when they start coming out in June and July and looking to kind of eat up those leaves of the plants, it can be pretty devastating, and you can almost lose an entire potato crop if you aren't vigilant at picking these guys off. So the warmer it is, the more active they are. So if you've got a really warm spring, watch out for these guys and catch them early. That's the best thing that you can do, is catch them early and kind of get rid of them sooner rather than later. Control methods, there aren't a lot of good ones. Crop rotation is probably the best one, not planting potatoes or anything in the potato family. So that would include your peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, ground cherries, anything of that family. Don't plant that in the same area 2 years in a row. That's just general crop rotation practice. If you do start seeing these guys on your plants, pick them off. If you see the eggs, crush them. That's probably the best method for homeowners, is just to pick them off and put them in a bucket of soapy water. That's probably the easiest method for it. Usually we say about 30% defoliation of your plant is when you're going to want to start chemical means of spraying them. But also something to keep in mind, especially early in the season when you're spraying, if you spray for Colorado potato beetle, You're also going to kill a lot of other good insects that are going to help your potatoes along. So I would really just keep an eye on your potatoes and try and pick off anything that you see early on in the season, and that's really going to squash them for, later in the season when it does get warmer out and they start, they could start to ramp up in population. Some different things that they might recommend you use are things like neems or pyrethroids. Definitely, check the label and make sure that it's approved use for the bug that you're targeting, and all that. So that is kind of potatoes in a nutshell. Next thing I'm going to talk about are sweet potatoes because they are different than potatoes. So I'm going to kind of move this out of the way because I've got my sweet potato stuff right here. So sweet potatoes, sometimes people call them yams, and that's something I kind of want to clear up right off the bat is sweet potatoes and yams are different. So this is a picture of a sweet potato up here, and it looks just like the one in your box. And this is a picture of a yam. So just visually, you can tell they are not the same thing. They're very different. So they still have kind of a starchy texture. And I know we talked about starchy and waxy with potatoes, how russets are more starchy and reds are more waxy. Sweet potatoes are just waxy. So that's good to know. So these are sweet potatoes, these are yams, these are different. A lot of people use them interchangeably. Sometimes if you buy canned yams in the store, it's actually, if you look at the ingredients, it's sweet potatoes. So that's just something to keep in mind. Sweet potato plant, just like the potato, they grow under the ground, but they are, again, a root. They are part of the root system. These are the leaves, obviously, up top. It doesn't produce a fruit so much. The sweet potato plant doesn't. This is what the sweet potato plant looks like when it's growing. It's kind of this long, viney type thing. And if you've seen Morning Glory, it looks pretty much like that. But yeah, this is the root of the sweet potato plant. And the sweet potatoes that you got in your box, sweet potatoes are propagated from slips. This is what I wanted to talk about. So just like on potatoes, they do have little eyes that'll develop, but the eyes will actually sprout just like this. And you can take those sprouts off the sweet potato and root them in potting mix. This is just a simple, yogurt container that we filled up with potting mix, and we put that sweet potato right in there. So this guy, we can just plant out in the field in the spring, and it's good to go. If you cut a sweet potato apart, it probably is just going to rot in the ground. It's not going to be like a potato where it's going to, grow from those eyes. So you're going to want to make sure that if you're planting sweet potatoes, you're planting slips. So this is what a slip might look like if you've grown it in a pot for a little bit of time. So I do want to talk a little bit about the sweet potatoes and how to utilize those. I figure a lot of people have used potatoes before and are pretty familiar with potatoes and how to use them and have maybe even favorite recipes that they like to use with their potatoes. But sweet potatoes are just a little bit different. So I've got, both sweet potatoes here. So I cut up some sweet potatoes in advance, and that's what I've got right here. But something to note as you're cutting this up. So the first thing you're going to want to do is wash your sweet potato. Same thing with the potatoes. Always wash them before you put them in water or try to boil or cook them or put them in the oven. Do give them a good rinse, a good washing, and you should be good to go with that. So here's your sweet potato. You're going to want to square it up as much as possible. I know some of them in the boxes were kind of like wiggly or just didn't grow straight. This is a pretty good specimen in terms of sweet potato. So you're going to want to square that up pretty well. So what you're going to do is take your sweet potato, and I may need to stand up for this, so you may not be able to see my face, but take your sweet potato and you'll cut off the ends, square it up, and then I would recommend cutting it in half again. So you need to, here we go. So, and you will notice as you cut these sweet potatoes, that there's going to be a little bit of white residue or juices that come out of them. That's perfectly normal. That's just part of how the sweet potato grows. So don't get concerned about the white. That's supposed to be there. So then I would go ahead and cut down lengthways, and then from there you can cut it down further. So I'll show you just in a second. I've got some prepped already with the purple ones to show you how that would look. So this is kind of half for the purple one. The purple ones are not as thick in diameter. So this is kind of that half. You can see how thick that is. Then I would cut it in half again, get it about this size. And then I would cut it in half again and get it down to about this size. So you can kind of see this is probably no more. You want to go no more than ½ an inch. You don't want to get super skinny because your fries will burn if you're cutting these into fries like this. But you don't want them super thick because they aren't going to bake as evenly. So cut them down like that. So basically you cut in half and then just keep cutting in half until you get through your whole sweet potato. So what you'll end up are fries about, this size. So you can kind of see how big that is. I've got a whole container full of those, and then these as well. These kind of look like, if you've ever gotten carrot sticks in the store, this is kind of what those are going to end up looking like. So if you wanted to make sweet potato fries and cut them, this is what they're going to look like. So again, thickness on this is really important. You don't want to get them too thin because they will burn, and you don't want to get them too thick because then they won't cook evenly. A good way to get those crunchy French fries, either with your potatoes or your sweet potatoes, is to parboil them ahead of time. So what parboiling is called, it's a partial boil. So what you'll do with these is you'll stick them in a pot for about, and boil them for maybe 5 to 7 minutes. I would go no more than 5 to 7 minutes. And that's just going to the water will change color a little bit, and that's when you're going to want to pull them off and place them on your tray to bake. So you can either oil your tray, or you can actually oil, the fries themselves, sprinkle some seasoning on them if you do that. And then you can bake them from there. But parboiling them in advance is going to give them just that, that creamy middle that you like to enjoy, but a crunchy outside. And you can really tell the difference if you can do this as an experiment as well. I did this last night as well. You can do a set of parboiled, and you can do just normal, just putting these on a tray, oiled. And you should really be able to tell the difference between the two of them. These are going to be the ones that are parboiled are going to be nice and creamy on the inside, but have that crunchy exterior that everyone loves. And these may even burn a little bit easier. They're not going to be cooked as evenly as the ones that are parboiled. So I would recommend doing that for sure. So that's going to give you, so you can kind of see what those fries look like. I'll show you. Once they're ready to go, you can see they're pretty uniform in size. They're not very long, so I would go shorter rather than longer, just because it's going to cook easier. Same thing with these. The purple ones are going to be, these are a little fatter in size than the other ones, but you can kind of see the size uniformity on there as well. These are also pretty long for what I would prefer, but some of your sweet potatoes were really, really long. So instead of cutting it in half, you may want to cut it in thirds. Something I would also caution you with in cutting these sweet potatoes, if you're going to do that, you can also bake these in the oven. Cutting them isn't the only way to do it. You can always bake these in the oven just like you do a baked potato. But if you want to cut these up, they will stain your clothes, your counters, your cutting board. So make sure that after you're done cutting, I would wash everything or wipe your counters down immediately afterwards, just to get rid of some of that pigmentation that comes out from the sweet potato. When I started cutting these open, it really reminded me of beets. If you've ever dealt with beets before, that red can stain and really get all over everything. But the thing that stained more than anything else is these orange ones. So watch out for that because they will stain your cutting board if you're cutting on a white surface. So beware of that and make sure that you wash everything right away when you're done if you want to avoid some of that staining. So move this off to the side. Another thing with sweet potatoes that's different than potatoes is sweet potatoes really like it hot. So if it's warmer out or warmer climate, that's why we don't see a lot of sweet potatoes grown in Iowa, is because our climate just isn't very warm for long enough to really be favorable for sweet potatoes. We can still grow them here, but it's just not as productive as it is a little bit further south. So the place that grows the most sweet potatoes out of anywhere in the country is North Carolina. They've got a really great climate for it, and a lot of producers really enjoy doing sweet potatoes down there. So again, warm climate, and that's really going to help those sweet potatoes be at their optimum level. I think that is about all for those sweet potatoes and yams. So I hope you enjoyed today's training. I hope you were able to utilize some of the things out of your box, or that you are now. And you can pick your favorite potato for what you're looking to cook, and you've maybe learned some tips and tricks along the way of how to use these things to the best of their ability. So again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions about any of the things that we covered today, or you want to learn where to find local foods, especially in the wintertime. Feel free to reach out to me. My email address is demezier@iastate.edu, or feel free to call our office at 563-583-6496, and we'll gladly help you out with any questions that you have. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy your Harvest of the Month Family Harvest Box for December potatoes. Thanks, everyone.